Welcome to the Coffee in the Barn. I'm Casey Bradley, President and founder of the Sun Swine Group. If you are thinking about entering, changing, advancing, or reinventing your career in the animal science industry, we are here to help you succeed. In each episode, we will cover a variety of topics surrounding work, life, and professional development, leveraging my 20-plus years as a global leader within the livestock industry and my ever-growing professional network to interview other leading professionals. We couldn't do this without our sponsors, NutriQuest, IFF, and Continental Search. Reach out to us on our social media platforms or visit thesunswinegroup.com and subscribe now not to miss another episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to a bonus episode of Season 2 of Coffee in the Barn. Today, our founder Dr. Casey Bradley will be interviewing Dr. Jim Smith, who is a member of the Coffee and Careers in Animal Science Committee, and he will share with us his career map. Once again, we want to thank our sponsors, NutriQuest, IFF, and Continental Search. Also, make sure to listen to our Season 1 of Coffee in the Barn and get more insights regarding professional development, work, and life experiences from different professionals around the world. And now, on with the episode.
All right, I'm excited to announce our next speaker for Season 2 of Coffee in the Barn. It is Dr. Jim Smith with Kent Nutrition. Jim is one of our volunteers on our Coffee and Careers in Animal Science Committee, and he's been a mentor to students and helped us develop this program. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you for the welcome.
Jim, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your role with Kent Nutrition currently?
Well, my role at Kent Nutrition Group is Senior Technical Swine Nutritionist. That just means I've been around a few years, and my job is to transfer our technology from our research and product development to help our customers, dealers, and their customers raise pigs more profitably. And I got here through an animal science degree at Kansas State and a master's and PhD at Kansas State, and had a couple other positions in the industry before I landed at Kent, actually just about 10 years ago.
Awesome. So when you were a kid, what did you want to do when you grew up? I mean, did you have a vision of what that looked like compared to what you're doing now?
Oh, it was easy. I wanted to be a farmer. I mean, since I could walk and climb on top of a tractor and turn the keys on and turn the lights on, I mean, that's what I wanted to do.
Well, technically you are a farmer though, correct?
Technically, it took me a while to get there, but technically I am. So
I was going to say, I enjoy your Twitter tweets coming through of the struggles of being a farmer and a professional.
Yeah, we both professions have their challenges, don't they?
Yes, definitely. So what were some hard lessons you learned in your career?
The first hard lesson I learned was to make sure you have mentors, both in your group and outside of your employment. The first job I took, when I walked in the door on May 18th, 1998, there was a memo on my desk announcing that the team that I was hired to work with was going to be moving from Des Moines, Iowa to Quincy, Illinois. So the team that I thought I was going to be working for was caught up in transfers, buying new houses, new roles, working their own political landscape as they were changing. And I didn't have that mentorship that I thought I was. And then the nutritionist that I thought I was going to work with most closely switched jobs about 3 months after I started. So I was kind of just languishing along without somebody across the hall to hold my hand.
And that was just like what you're doing today, but a lower level technical nutritionist.
That was just field nutritionist, not just a field nutritionist, but the struggle with that was that the people I work with, both customers and sales teams, were used to working with seasoned nutritionists. So they assumed that I had my PhD and I was seasoned, and it wasn't a good fit not to have that mentor to help.
So you mentioned Des Moines, and you're back in Indiana now, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Did you have to sacrifice or compromise on anything in your younger career? Because obviously you're in Indiana.
Without a doubt. When I got my doctorate and I accepted the job in Iowa, I told my mother at the time that we would never move back to Indiana because at that time the political climate was against the hog industry. That was a sacrifice that we're willing to make that we'd have to make an 8-hour drive back to see my parents and my sister.
And so, but you've been able to in your career get back home now.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if serendipity, but the stars lined up when we had made the decision when my wife was finishing veterinary school that we were either going to stay or move to home. But for me, because her family was moved to Hawaii at the time, it just so happened that the vet clinic that I used when I was in high school had an opening, and she was able to move back here. And at the same time, Hubbard Feeds is looking for a nutritionist for the Eastern Corn Belt. So it worked out perfectly.
Well, cool. Since you brought it up, your wife's a veterinarian and you're a PhD swine nutritionist. Two professional careers. How do you balance that? You got a farm, you raise sheep, you have children. How do you guys balance that? And whose career, is it a tug and pull? Is it ebbs and flows? How does that work in your relationship?
Ebbs and flow is probably the best way to put it. I'm married to a wonderful wife because she is resilient enough to take care of things when I'm gone, like doing chores. She didn't have to pull any lambs this year, but she definitely makes sure that things work when I'm gone. The balancing comes into place where you have to communicate. And for instance, I'm going to be visiting with a customer tomorrow, and it's a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's outside the normal, but you just make it work. As far as any specific tools or things that we use, I guess we're kind of the mindset. If you want to make it work, you make it work.
I was going to say that, my husband reminds me on several occasions that I fail to plan or write stuff down, and he puts it on me. So we kind of laugh. It's the same situation there a little bit. But I think I'm going to transition him to a Google Calendar so we can line up our calendars a little bit better.
There you go. Well, and it works out nicely for her that she's in a small animal clinic. She has no emergency hours, one Saturday a month that she works. So she has a really nice schedule that I can work around. And the other thing that has taken me many years to get comfortable with is saying no or work schedule around what I need done. That takes some planning on my part instead of waiting for a salesman to say, hey, I need you. It's more like, I need to make a trip to Northwest Iowa before your customers start planting corn. So let's get this done in March or February.
Mm-hmm.
That just so happens to coincide with things that we have to do here at home too. You have to think out past next week or the week after.
Yeah, it's really hard to balance life and career if it's, last minute calls that require a great distance to travel.
Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't mean that there's times where you get a call or something comes up and say, okay, I'll be there next week. Those things have to happen, but it's your emergency doesn't turn into my emergency sometimes. And the other thing that we've done, we are not afraid to sit down with a glass of wine and forget about stuff. I mean, we'll have our discussions about how work was, but when she comes home, the phone's off, the computer's off. It's our time. Of course, it's easier now that we only have one at home instead of three.
You've kind of walked through a little bit about your career, always, very similar roles, different companies. Would you go back and change anything?
Yeah, the first job I took was because it was the highest salary they offered. And in retrospect, I should have had one more interview with a nutritionist that I have a lot of respect for now that I'm out of school. I think that would have changed the trajectory of my job, my career.
Are you happy with your career, though, so far? Are you living your version of success?
Yeah, I think I am finally. I've had this conversation with several nutritionists and actually with my wife, particularly around the syndrome called imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
where you feel like you're not adequate and you only got here because of luck, not skill.
Mm-hmm.
And comfortable is not the right word because people think comfortable is complacent. I'm happy with where I am as a nutritionist and the way that my skill set and what I want to do with my life fits with how I can help my customers.
It's interesting for you to say that because a lot of young people talk about imposter syndrome and a lot of people like to say fake it till you make it. And it's really just trial and error what we do and we learn. I mean, that's the great thing of being a scientist is we get to continue to learn and improve things.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's fake it until you make it as much as being envious or not envious of other nutritionists or other people that are successful. I find myself at times comparing, oh man, I'm only a nutritionist, and this person I went to school with is now a CEO. It's taken me a while to get to the point where, hey, this is what I am. I like what I'm doing, and it's good for me.
Yeah, you mentioned getting early mentors in and out of your company. So who's mentored you or influenced you in your career decisions?
Well, the biggest ones were Dr. Jim Nelson and Mike Tokash when I was at K-State getting out. And those discussions about, and of course that was 1997, 98, so it's been a few years ago, about this is setting up your career for where it's going to go. So this is your launching pad, and making sure that you have a decent opportunity and not a perfect opportunity. The other nutritionist that I spent a lot of time with in my early career was Mark Bertram. He was really helpful because he was actually the nutritionist that left. But in the time period I got to work with him, he exposed me to a lot of things that were outside of what I learned at K-State.
Yeah, I like Mark. He's a great nutritionist and a great person. Let's go. What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self if you could?
Well, I think we hit on it, was looking at the jobs outside of just what the salary is.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was invest in your 401k sooner.
Yeah, I would agree. No, that's a good one.
Yeah, because I didn't invest in my ADM 401k, which at the time was an ESOP. I'd only been there 2 years. But then I started, so it's not like I waited decades, but doing it right away makes a difference.
No, definitely. I tell myself I would have invested in land in Northwest Arkansas, Bitcoin, the stock market a little bit more. I would have not spent money, but like invested it. That is definitely the piece of advice I would give my younger self too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask you a few questions about coffee and careers and kind of tell the audience listening, because it's not just students or young professionals, but what have you enjoyed about participating in coffee and careers and animal science as a mentor and as a committee member?
I've enjoyed hearing about experiences that are now 30 years beyond me. I left Purdue with my undergrad in 93, and being exposed to what we're hearing from the students has opened my eyes to how things have changed. And selfishly, it has helped me relate to my daughter that just graduated from Kansas State and my son that's at Purdue in animal sciences. So it's helped me understand their plights or their journey through school, instead of saying, well, when I was in school, this is what we did. The other thing that has helped me professionally is having realistic expectations of what undergrads as they come out. And I think that's helped me as I've worked with some new graduates in their early career, in the sense of it's real easy to say, well, you should have learned this in feeds and feeding, as opposed to, okay, your experience is different. How can we apply some training to make up for those deficiencies that would be really easy for me to say that, well, you didn't get out of your undergrad what you should have.
Where do you hope coffee and careers and animal science goes to in the future? Like, what do you see for it or hope?
I hope that every school that we interact with at animal science meetings can go, oh, I know you from seeing you or hearing your comments on one of our webinars, and being able to get outside of the bubble of the students that I know. Mm-hmm. And I know some of the students at K-State because of the interactions with them, a couple at Purdue, and that's about it right now. So if we can get exposed so we can be at those meetings or see a resume come up, like Marissa, for instance, seeing her poster at Animal Science and her presentation, like, oh, I know who she is because of the interaction. Yeah.
So growing your network earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Any other last minute thoughts or piece of advice for young professionals or even professionals that are our age or in their career?
One is be inquisitive. I think as scientists, we naturally are inquisitive, but don't let your inquisitiveness stop. Don't be afraid to go up to an old fart like me or Mark Bertram or even Dr. Schinkel, but cautious on that one. And
sorry,
ask them,
Dr.
introduce
Schinkel.
yourself. Yes, he understands completely what it means. To ask questions, and also don't be afraid to question what we're being told is the truth. And I think your question at the branched chain amino acid seminar is perfect, where everybody in the room's going, oh, that makes perfect sense. But a couple of us were going, I don't think so. So don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions.
That's some good advice, and you bring up a good point. What I've noticed at the meeting, so like I used to be scared to death to present at Midwest Animal Science meeting because my first one, Dr. Lee Southern, was a judge. And then also he was a judge for my undergrad presentation. And then he was in my master's presentation. And he always asked the really tough questions. And so I'd go up there shaking. And then I'd see him sitting the second time in the front row. And I'm like shaking. And to this day, I still walk up there. I think this year was the first time I wasn't shaking when I went up there to present. And I've just noticed that, I don't know if it's a change in culture in our society or like a big society, that we can't question other people's work. We just assume what it is. And how do you give advice for students, for somebody like me? She didn't answer my question, by the way, the student, and I won't mention her name.
Oh, no, she did. No,
she did not answer it at all. I don't even think she realized what I was truly asking her to answer. And hopefully I can follow up with her sometime in the future. But how do you give some advice for students who get challenged, or even professionals? Because that's where I think we have a problem today in our industry, is we don't challenge each other. Because a lot of times, I don't know if it's this anti-bullying concept or understanding that there's, a good reason to challenge other scientists, to learn and question. What's some of the advice or your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're hitting on a topic that I feel is going to become more difficult as we've navigated the last 2 years of being told, follow the science. And if you don't believe what we tell you, then you're anti-science. When in fact, science is based upon questioning what you know. Why else would we be where we are now with nutrition if we didn't ask why, or is this the best? We wouldn't be here. The advice I give to young people or anybody doing a presentation is, if they ask a question that disagrees with you, they're not attacking you. They're simply being inquisitive about the science or the answers that you came up with, and they're probably approaching it from a different direction. So it's not attacking your work as much as attacking wanting to be confident in their understanding of what you just told them. And that's tough today, because we take any question as criticism instead of just inquisitiveness.
Well, I think some of it can also be criticism, because that's the only way we're going to get better, constructive criticism. And, I've gotten it all my life, and there's a fine balance there in my mind. But I think that's what I've noticed a lot with these younger students working with them, is they do not handle criticism very well, and they don't handle being challenged, which sometimes is to help you grow. If that question is I could have just ignored it and not said anything in the room. The question was directed for her professor to say,
oh yeah,
why was this done this way? Right. But it was also, hopefully she could grow from that. And, I just see that those challenges that I think young people are going to have to work through as scientists, because like as you said, science is about being questioned. And when you're a field nutritionist, and I still, see when I see Roger's phone call come through my phone in the middle of animal science meetings, I first just put my pigs on test. I'm like, oh no, what did I do now? And it's always the diet. There's some tough customers, and I just bring that up, and this is a career journey and map, but I think that's a good point for you to talk about. You talked about imposter syndrome in your career journey, but being challenged by customers, how often does that happen, and how have you worked through that?
It happens all the time, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen for the next 20 years of my career, 15 or whatever it is. The first thing, and it's the first thing that Dr. Nelson ever told me about doing a presentation. He said, take a breath and repeat the question. As a new presenter, you took it as a way, making it seem like you were stupid that you didn't listen. And no, it gives you 30 seconds to think and gather your thoughts. And when you're challenged, and I think about one of my customers, they challenge just about everything I tell them. And it's just their nature. They're that personality that pushes back and questions. You take your deep breath and you say, okay, Well, this is why I suggest it, because I feel the research says that we can do whatever, or the prices say we need to make this change. And then explain yourself. And in most cases, with a customer, it's not saying, well, you idiot, you're such a stupid nutritionist. Why did you do that? It's mostly for them, with the challenge to me to completely sell them and be confident that my recommendation is what they want to do. Because rarely you're going to have a customer that says, oh, yes, whatever you say, Dr. Smith.
No, exactly. But they're also, it's the way to test you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're wishy-washy on your decision, they're not going to trust you or trust your decisions.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And you'll probably get more of that. I don't get much of it now from a judging, testing as I did previously. But now some of them just want to be a pain. And some of them are just testing in nature. But I think they just want to be confident and sold. And in some cases, they want to be able to explain it to somebody else.
Well, I can say now that I'm my own business owner and have to make tough financial decisions and where do I go next, right? I get why I got those tough questions. And I get why, Dr. Southern and other professors, I just remember him especially. But what I also noticed and just point on my career is even though Dr. Southern to me was that person in the room that I dreaded I really respected his work, but from the standpoint, he really taught me a lot, right? He prepared me. But then in the same room, I had Dr. Dean Boyd stand up and answer a question that I could not. So I see that dynamic there is, just to point this out, is you don't always have to know the answer either. And that's kind of where, Dr. Boyd, he didn't belittle me. He didn't make me feel like I didn't know what I was talking about, but really helped clarify the research trial and why we did it. And that proved to me that I also don't have to know everything, and I can come back to them and work with my network. And that's what I love about Coffee and Careers in Animal Science is now I have this network. I've had a network of professionals, but now I have a network of younger people who I know who I can call on that are studying different things if I don't have the answer. And I think those are some good lessons to realize and advice. Kind of pivoted off a little bit, but I think it was important to bring up.
I think you bring up a good point on the saying, I don't know. Now, don't do it all the time. Don't use that as your default when you do have an idea. But if you truly don't, if somebody comes up and asks you a question that's completely outside of your wheelhouse, then don't baffle them because they'll smell it out.
So let's wrap this up again real quick. What is the last piece of advice based on our conversation in your career journey?
Don't burn bridges. And that plays into keeping the network that you have vibrant. I mean, vibrant in the sense that it's growing and you use it. And it's not a encyclopedia put on a shelf and grab it when you need it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And just remember, everybody, life is short, so drink your coffee in the barn.
That's right.
We hope you liked this interview. You can listen to this and other episodes on coffeeinthebarn.buzzsprout.com. We will also like to thank our sponsors, NutriQuest, IFF, and Continental Research. We are grateful for supporting us in this journey. Remember to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Careers in Animal Science, and our YouTube channel, Animal Science Office Hours. Make sure to check the links in the show notes, and remember, life is short, take your coffee in the barn.